Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is spearheading a campaign that targets journalists who have spoken out against him. Since Benjamin Netanyahu was indicted for bribery earlier this year, his attacks against journalists he suspects of celebrating his downfall have only gotten worse. In fact, Netanyahu is going after certain journalists he finds especially odious. He calls them out by name and incites his supporters to smear them. Perhaps the most interesting case is that of Barak Ravid, an Israeli journalist known for breaking diplomatic scoops and critical coverage of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He recently received notice he was being dismissed as Channel 13 TV's diplomatic correspondent. Ravid has gained a reputation for breaking stories about Israel's relations with the US, the European Union, and other foreign countries. His reporting has upset Netanyahu several times, and the Prime Minister has publicly rebuked Ravid in the past. According to Haaretz, dismissal has the scent of a political assassination. So why is Netanyahu targeting journalists?
It's not a secret. There are many journalists who think that Netanyahu is not a good prime minister, and they voice it very loudly. And there are few, if you take it by numbers, few journalists who write the opposite. They think that Netanyahu is excellent prime minister, that he has got great performance and he should continue. So this is a department of ideas, of views. In that case, we don't have any complaints. The story goes when you go to the people who report about facts and you see if they have priority in their decisions or they don't have priority. If their self-minded, self-ideas influence or not influence the way they report about the story. So Netanyahu, I believe he understands who is against him and who is for him in the ideas. And in this case, of course, he is replying to those journalists that they are against him. And if you accept these rules of the game, you understand that if you write an idea, again, not facts, you can expect that he will reply. Because if you bring facts, he will never reply to you. He will never say that you are doing something which is not good. Because this is your job. You have to report to your listeners about the trial, about the court, about the money, about the lawyers. This is day-by-day news. But if you write an article or you write your idea, you can expect that he will reply to you. By the way, he's not doing it by himself, as you know. There is a team of the new media, young people. As we always say that we are, our generation are immigrating to the new society of the high tech or society of the new media. We didn't grow up with new media, but the young generation, they know how to use it very efficiently. So these 2 or 3 young gentlemen are helping him and attacking those journalists in a very severe words.
Another case is the example of journalist Moshe Nussbaum. When Netanyahu's criminal investigations began 3 years ago in December 2017, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took the stage at a large political rally in Tel Aviv and mocked reporter Moshe Nussbaum's expressive eyebrows. The crowd roared hysterically at the sight of the Prime Minister himself, ridiculing the journalist. Nevertheless, the scathing coverage that Netanyahu received for this stunt eventually led Netanyahu to call Nussbaum to apologize. What does Netanyahu have to fear?
Every day is a new day. The coronavirus is changing the map. People are out of job. People do not get paid. People are frustrated. People are not happy. And if it might be another elections, maybe the opposition will win. He knows how to play the cards. Every day he's got a poll, secret poll. He knows what's the base, where are those 4 seats are going to, what are the spirit of the people, and according to that political judgment, he will decide if he will call for early elections. And with early elections, there were the days that they said he will get 40 seats. Now he's got 31, so he decreased. Political game is changing from day to day. But the real opposition, the big opposition, still is not big enough to replace him.
Amnon Abramovich is a veteran Channel 12 reporter and a political commentator. He has covered the criminal investigations into Netanyahu. Especially in the last few years, his relationship with Netanyahu has become even more tense. Netanyahu's supporters have come to see Abramovich as a symbol of Netanyahu's alleged harassment by the media and the left. In late June, a mob of protesters at a pro-Netanyahu right-wing rally surrounded Amnon Abramovich, hurling insults at him as he tried to cover the rally. Several Israeli police officers were needed to extract Abramovich from the crowd. Netanyahu's targeting of journalists created a stir on social media. According to Tal Yankovich, while speaking about journalist Amnon Abramovich, what did he expect? Will he be petted? This garbage has been lying and distorting the right for decades. He will go to sponsored demonstrations by his friends on the left. Eddie Reese retaliates with, the quarrelsome. These are Netanyahu's supporters who attack the law enforcement agencies and anyone who opposes Netanyahu. Convey an important message to children and the younger generation. According to Gal Gosh, more than sad and frightening, it is sickening. Nothing here is irrelevant, and there are no ideological principles and controversies. It is just an uninhibited gang war. The quarrel will lead to dismantling of the current system. Is there an anti-Zionism plot? According to John Kittredge, it may not quite yet be the Dark Ages, but it is getting gloomier by the day. Shefi Pass says that all attack videos reinforce our claim. It was ugly and unpleasant at the rallies, but no more than that. Curses and a circle of cops. No one shouted Nazis, at least not yet. So, should journalists in Israel fear Netanyahu?
Netanyahu comes and will go one day. Don't forget there's also the social media, which is today in your country and in my country no less influential than the traditional media. And finally, the social media is quite free. It's very hard to put in Israel censorship on the social media. So I don't think that journalists should be afraid. Journalists should be troubled about the nature of their job, about how much freedom they have, but I don't think that fear is the word, no.
Guy Peleg, who works for Israel's Channel 12, another journalist, was attacked by Netanyahu. In late 2019, at least 3 messages attacking Channel 12 were posted on Netanyahu's Facebook page. It was accompanied by a photo of him with the words "fake news," alluding to his publication of leaks from criminal investigations into alleged corruption involving the Prime Minister. Even the Prime Minister's son, Yair Netanyahu, has took a shot at him. Prime Minister's son has urged Peleg's detractors to refer to him as Pinocchio and Dumbo in order to make fun of his physical appearance.
I think Netanyahu is shaking. I think the demonstrations, the attacks in the media are getting some momentum. This does not mean that within few weeks he will fall, but I think that right now Netanyahu is really challenged. And if this will gain more momentum, I think we are reaching a point in which something will happen. Don't forget that his trial is on, and from few months from now, he will be in court 3 times a week, which also is not very simple for a prime minister to sit humiliated in court 3 times a week, almost every day, the whole day. So I think we are facing the last chapter of Netanyahu's term in Israel, but when and how will it end, nobody knows.
According to the Israeli newspaper Yediot Achronot or Ynet News, at least 40 journalists have been dismissed from various Israeli news outlets in 2020. Raviv Ducker, a journalist who works for the Daily Haaretz and Channel 13, was also subject of harassment by Netanyahu. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video on his Facebook page, hammered Raviv Ducker for carrying out a, quote, criminal kangaroo court, and later called on him to be imprisoned. Netanyahu's Facebook post came after Drucker reported on Case 4000, which discusses an alleged bribery deal struck by Netanyahu. Netanyahu, who is 70 years old, is the first standing prime minister to face trial in Israel's short history. He was sworn back into office as a head of a rare unity cabinet earlier this year after an 18-month political deadlock. His political rival, Benny Gantz, agreed to share power following 3 failed elections. Netanyahu has rejected calls by opponents to step down while he fights corruption cases. Just how much trouble is Netanyahu in anyways?
What it is in his mind, it's really in his mind today, is his trial. His trial is starting at the end of this month, or the end of 6th of December this year. And his trial will become 3 days a week. There will be 3 days a week. Israel goes on, day yes and day not. And he has to prepare himself. He doesn't like to spend money at all. He is not. He's keep every penny in his pocket. And he's trying to get the money from other sources. Right now, the government, it's not the government, it's some commission that had to give the permission. They didn't give him the permission to get money from other sources because it look like a bribe. So today is very troubled with that. He says that he's thinking about the corona crisis, etc., etc., but mostly he's thinking Netanyahu.
Netanyahu has been indicted in 3 cases known as 1000, 2000, and 4000. In case 1000, Netanyahu is accused of receiving gifts, mainly cigars and bottles of champagne, from powerful businessmen in exchange for favors. This, while in case 2000, Netanyahu is accused of offering to help improve the circulation of Israeli newspaper Yediot Achronot in exchange for positive coverage. In case 4000, Netanyahu is accused of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Netanyahu has strongly denied all the charges against him, branding them a witch hunt by political opponents, and has vowed to clear his name. Hence, this is why he is going after the journalists covering his cases. He believes that Israeli media and the mainstream media is after him. In the process, Netanyahu has been able to transmute the sentiments of his radical right-wing supporters into political energy. What does the Israeli public think about all of this? Do they think it's okay for Netanyahu to target journalists? Do they believe journalists should be protected?
תשמעי, אמרת מילה לעניין ונכון, אבל הוא יש לו דבר אחד במוח, זה המוח, מה שאומר לו הוא עושה. הוא אוהב לשמוע אחרים, הוא אוהב לשלוט על כולם, אבל זה לא נכון. לא נכון. מדינה צריך אחד לעזור לשני, אחד.
כל העיתונאים שמאלנים בעיניי, אז ואם ביבי לוקח את עצמו, אם ביבי מהליכוד והוא כביכול ימני, אז הוא יכול לצאת נגד שמאלנים, כמו ששמאלנים יוצאים נגד ימנים, ימנים יוצאים נגד שמאלנים.
תכלס כרגע אני חושב שבנימין נתניהו יש לו הרבה בעיות על הראש, ואני חושב שיש לו תפקיד לא קל כראש ממשלה. עכשיו הוא צריך להתייחס לעיתונאים כמו שצריך, כי בתכל'ס זה גם התפקיד שלו. אבל כרגע עם כל המשפטים, עם הקואליציה וכל הדברים האלה, אני לא באמת, אין לי כאילו באמת מה להגיד על זה, כאילו. אני לא יודע מה הייתי עושה במקומו.
תראי, אני חושבת שבעניין הזה הרבה דברים יכול לקרות, לא יודעת, הפוליטיקה באופן כללי, הם אומרים הרבה דברים לא נכונים, את יודעת. ובעיניי ביבי פשוט בן אדם, אין משהו יותר מזה. כמובן התקשורת יכולה לעשות מה שהיא רוצה, כמובן יש תקשורת, ברוך השם יש לנו תקשורת וטכנולוגיה, אבל תמיד זה היה נגד.
שעצם זה שהוא יוצא לטלוויזיה כל פעם, והוא לא כל כך מאפשר לאנשים לשאול אותו, לעיתונאים זה קצת החמצה לנו כעם. אני הייתי מאוד רוצה שיווצר מין איזה דיאלוג, או איזה קצת שאלות של ביקורת, כי לפעמים הביקורת היא גם חיובית והיא בונה. וקצת צר לי שזה לא קורה. אני כן אוהבת לראות אותו בטלוויזיה, כי הוא אדם מאוד כריזמטי, ויש לו איזו אמירה כזאת, וזה גם חשוב לשמוע מה המדיניות שלו, ואיפה הוא עובד, ומה הוא הולך לעשות.
Netanyahu's supporters rage about the left-wing media. According to Al Monitor, anyone who watched the video of Abramovich surrounded by a tight police cordon as he was extricated from the jeering crowd must realize that, were it not for the officers, the incident could have ended in a physical altercation or worse.
The famous journalist that was attacked was my friend Amnon Abramovich from Channel 12. That he came to cover a public demonstration of the right, and they recognized him because he's a television personality, and they start shouting at him, "Go home, don't stay here, we don't like you, we don't like your ideas, you hate the prime minister, we hate you, go." So he had to leave the place, and police officers were escorting him all the way to his car. He was not hurt, I mean, nobody touched him, but he got some public and unpleasant words towards him. This is bad. Journalists should not be treated like that.
One might think that all Israeli journalists would rise to the defense of a long list of journalists marked by Netanyahu, but this did not happen. Top journalists identified with the Netanyahu supporting right wing complain of a double standard. They argue that the Israeli president doesn't rise to their defense when they are attacked. Cursing people out falls under freedom of expression, according to the right-wing camp led by Netanyahu. This is exactly what makes Netanyahu so successful. He has been able to make attacks on journalists into a squabble between right and left. The Prime Minister clearly has no plans to take responsibility for these threats, even though he incited them. What once happened quietly and behind the scenes has now become an open war. Just recently, left-wing journalist Rina Matzliach of Channel 12 said on her June 20 show, Netanyahu's supporters say they would still vote for him if he raped their daughter. The comment raised anger within Netanyahu's camp, and Matzliach family began to accompany her to work out of fear for her safety. Were journalists ever free to speak up?
I see. Listen, tell you what. Well, Netanyahu, in the last 10 years, is trying to be some kind of dictator. And of course, the press goes against it. Netanyahu is involved right now in some frames that again said that he's running by the judge. Yes, the trial goes on. He doesn't want to cover it. He doesn't want the press to cover it. And it's like a Pandora case. When you open it up, there will be more troubles. He tried to shut it down, to close it down. So this is what is afraid of the newspaper. You wanted the newspaper to say he's the greatest man and he's succeeds with everything he's done.
Netanyahu has had a tense relationship with the press throughout his political career. This isn't the first time he has claimed to be a victim of harassment and persecution. He even created his own newspaper, Israel Hayom, with the help of his billionaire friend Sheldon Adelson, to counter the effects of what he sees as a hostile media. This time, however, Netanyahu is in the fight of his life. He needs the frenzied crowds to delegitimize the voices in major media outlets that are critical of him, and he seems to be taking things up a notch, and there is no one to rein him in. These political assassinations of journalists show that the Israeli regime will not allow dissent from journalists, and those with a large following speak up against controversial politics.
Israelis are divided, maybe like never before, to two camps. Those who see Netanyahu as their leader and really love and admire him, and those who see Netanyahu as a demon, not less than a demon. The truth, by the way, is somewhere in between. Both sides are very exaggerating, but those two sides are very, very strong in their emotions, and this is not going to change soon. The only thing which might change it now is the economical situation, which is getting worse and worse because of the coronavirus. And I think there will be a stage in which Netanyahu will pay a price for the economical crisis.
אי-אמון עצומה בהם, בכל מי שתפר את כתב האישום נגדי. ולכן, אזרחי ישראל, אני ניצב פה היום כראש הממשלה שלכם, בגב זקוף ובראש מורם. ואני דורש, חשפו הכל, גלו הכל. נציגי התקשורת, אני יודע למה אתם כאן. אתם רוצים לצלם אותי בבית המשפט כחלק ממסע התעמולה רק לא ביבי, שלא נפסק אפילו לרגע. אבל אני רוצה שהציבור יראה את כל התמונה, שהציבור ידע את כל האמת.
Here are the news making the press in Israel. Ynet News. Pandemic expert pleads with the Israeli that the only way to slow down the rising death toll from the pandemic is to close down. According to Dr. Bar Yam, Tel Aviv shouldn't worry about closure so much, as it is not a unique thing, and said that countries across the world are doing it to avoid more deaths. Haaretz. There's nothing Netanyahu likes more than to rule temporarily forever. Apparently, since Netanyahu is in so much trouble and his appetite for power has only grown, he might be the prime minister for a very long time, even if all of Israelis continue protesting his tenure daily. The Jerusalem Post. There is a fear of another egg shortage in Israel. Israel may suffer from an egg shortage in the coming weeks and during the holiday season in Israel. This is raising fears of a repeat of the severe egg shortage that occurred during the Passover holiday earlier this year. Many are also complaining of sporadic and chronic shortages of food items such as butter and milk. Globes. COVID-19 hastens the decline of Israel's Main Street stores. Long before the COVID-19 pandemic reared its ugly head, the stores in Israel's main streets were losing the battle against air-conditioned shopping malls and the more fashionable power centers. Municipalities have been forlornly trying to revive the fortunes of their main shopping streets, for the most part without any great success. Then the coronavirus crisis hit and caused new hardships for store owners. The Times of Israel. Thousands of Israelis have held a huge rally in front of the Prime Minister's residence in occupied Jerusalem Al-Quds, calling on the embattled Prime Minister to resign. They want Netanyahu to resign because they believe the crises that Israel is facing, from the coronavirus mismanagement to the political uncertainty, comes from Netanyahu's hold on power.